I mentioned that we study culture and language. The reason that's notable is because culture and language are inseparable. As you learn the culture, you can't really learn the culture actually without learning language. And if you learn language, it defines the culture. It's a way of describing the culture. It describes the way they think. So you can't really separate the two. And what's underlying these tribal people is an animistic worldview that's very deep, and you can strip off the outside layers. People can become religious and they could go to a church, or they could put clothes. You can put clothes on these people, but that doesn't change the inside worldview. And to be able to get in deep, you have to go back to the beginning, and you have to start to build those foundations. Their worldview tells them about a spirit world that's very different from what the Bible presents. So if you introduce terminology about supernatural things without that foundation, what they will do is they'll take their animistic concepts and they'll apply those to what you've just shared about this supernatural thing, because that's the only frame of reference they have to draw from. So then what you have is this syncretized combination of Christianity and animism. It's error is what the result is. Even though you said it right, they combined it with their old animistic thinking, and so you ended up with error. But by going back to the beginning in the chronological teaching, you begin by describing the character of God, and as God has revealed himself in his word through history, you're able to show his character, his righteousness, his judgment, and his provision for through a blood sacrifice, and always saving those who trust in him, and those kind of things. So those concepts are laid very slowly, and that whole animistic worldview starts to become challenged, and it's introducing what the Bible's worldview is. The biblical worldview is presented through the chronological teaching. So then, when you get to the gospel at the end, when you're presenting these truths, they have a foundation, a solid foundation to rest on, and they're not drawing from their animistic worldview to try to fill out the story and ending up with a syncretized or mixed up mess. So that's why we find it so valuable. And then as you continue teaching through the epistles, repeatedly, even the Romans 12:1, present yourself as living sacrifices. Well, what's a sacrifice? The whole sacrificial system is all a foundation that they've heard because we went through the chronological teaching. So they can say, well, these sacrifices were killed and offered. God's not telling us that we should kill ourselves and offer ourselves. He wants us in our lives to offer ourselves in the same way that these were offered. These sacrifices were offered in the past. So anyway, it gives them a foundation to basically hang these truths on as they start to go through the rest as well. So very, very valuable. For me as a Bible teacher, it helps guarantee that I'm not going to be preaching my pet theologies or my favorite parts of the Bible and skipping other parts, or being reactive in my teaching. I'm going to, if a fight came up, I'm going to teach about how to have self-control. No. As you go through methodically, then you're teaching what God's word says, and you're doing it proactively, so that when they get to a certain situation, they've been through this teaching and they've got it before the fact instead of doing it in a reactive way. So they always are very excited and eager to receive God's word, and their translation booklets, after often not a very long time, are dog-eared and worn because they don't have a lot of media, they don't have a lot of entertainment, they don't have a lot of distractions, and they take God's word and they read it, and they read it, and they read it. And there's been times where I've been challenged because they're quoting verses back to me, and it's really neat to see them using it and enjoying it and having it speak to their hearts.